Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event. Fight fans worldwide, you've tuned into the #1 undisputed boxing podcast today. This is the Boxing Breakdown. Now, your heavy-handed, hard-hitting host, Mark Roxey.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Boxing Breakdown. And we are excited that you are with us again tonight here. We are fortunate to have another episode. And without further ado, I'm going to invite my guests on in. Come on in, everybody. What's up?
What's up, man?
Yeah, man. So I'm good. I'm doing good, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you guys. I know that the listeners are going to really get into this podcast and enjoy what we have to talk about tonight. And up to the right corner of the screen, we have Mr. Paul S. Haberman, Esquire. What's up?
How are you? Good to be back.
Yeah, and down on the lower left, we have Mr. John Maresca, boxing manager extraordinaire. What's up?
Thanks for having me back as well.
And the man that needs no introduction on the bottom right corner is Mr. Harold Hunt, professional boxing judge and co-host of the Boxing Breakdown. What's up?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good, brother. I'm good. And again, here we go. Let's get started. Buckle up. Let's get into the we got a lot of stuff to talk about, man. We have not been on the air for a while. And there's been a lot of stuff going on in boxing. All of us have been extremely busy, and we've been blowing up each other's phones. And I know, Harold, we've been talking back and forth. Oh, my gosh, we got to get on because there's a lot to talk about. So let's get started with Ryan Garcia, Harold. What you got? Ryan Garcia.
Well, Ryan looked really good, man. I was really surprised. I thought he would have a little more ring rust. He wasn't as sharp as he needed to be, but he had a point who really didn't want to engage with him too much. Initially, he came out. He thought he could, but he stayed away. But Ryan worked on some stuff. I thought he got a chance to really meld with his trainer. He got kind of chance to move around a little bit. He still has the jab. He still has a little moxie about him. So it wasn't a really bad performance for someone who had been off for that amount of time. He seemed mentally stable to me in the way that he took his direction and how he stuck with the game plan. And even though he was being frustrated by the way the other guy was fighting and, wouldn't engage and constantly trying to stay out the way, he still stayed on par. He didn't appear frustrated. So for that, I credit his new trainer, Mr. Goosen.
Yeah, Joe Goosen. Yeah, man. I mean, does anybody else have an opinion on that fight? Because, well, first of all, let's just say this before I get your opinions. Ryan Garcia is 22-0. He's got 18 KOs, right? And as Harold so eloquently mentioned, he has a new trainer in Joe Goosen. And if you guys out there are not fully abreast of what's going on in the backside of boxing, he recently had a fight against Emmanuel Tago, and he won a unanimous decision against Tago, and it was a performance. I mean, John, what do you think about the performance?
I mean, I think it served its purpose. He got a W. He got to get his feet wet with his new trainer. And also, he was fighting somebody who didn't really want to fight. That kind of went into survival mode after maybe the 6th round or so. So all things considered, I mean, he got a W. He got a little, back in the mix immediately. And it absolutely served its purpose. And that's that.
Right. Well, that was well said. It served its purpose. And so, Paul, do you have an opinion on that performance?
That was actually the one card I did not get to watch this past weekend. I read the result, which seems to coincide with what they were talking about there. It sounds like he got some good work. It sounds like, to their point, it served its purpose. He got some good work in, went the distance against a guy at least with a good record. It sounds like he fought very negatively, got into rhythm with his new trainer, knocked off rust. I don't see a downside. It'd be good to get him all the way back because he was also one of the bigger social media presences when he was active at a time when a lot of fighters seem to not be marketing themselves that well. He was doing it admirably, and I'd like to see him get back to regular activity and his stature as as something of a social media sensation that actually has substance, which is nice to see.
And out of sight, out of mind. Now he's back in sight.
Yeah, I mean, on the other hand, if I may submit, I think the Ryan Garcia performance was very telling. I was not super impressed with the work. I felt he was kind of stiff. I didn't see any head movement, and there's some things there to be concerned about. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that's that's where I'll leave that.
Well, I'm sure you saw being of your ilk. However, he didn't have to move his head. He didn't have to do anything. He didn't have to be defensive. He didn't have to do any of those things. So we didn't get to see any of that. My main takeaway was he did not get frustrated. And that happens when you have a long layoff.
Yeah.
Even Earl was frustrated the first 3 rounds with Ugas.
Right. Well, that's a good point. That's a very good point, Harold. I mean, I can't say that he got frustrated. That was not in the picture. But it wasn't an outstanding performance. Sure enough to get your feet wet again and get back into the ring. I get it. It'll be interesting to see what comes down the pike next. What do you think's next for Ryan Garcia? Anybody?
Well, he got a commercial. I'll tell you that. He's got a Gatorade commercial with the basketball player. It's getting heavy rotation right now. Right. And, now he's being force-fed back to us again.
And it was the frustrating part is, like you say, we can't predict what's next. Is we got a bunch of great fighters hovering within a weight class of each other, and they just won't fight each other. Right. So we can, predict all day, but I just don't see any desire to fight each other. I don't know what they're waiting for. Maybe they think it'll be a little more lucrative with some more wins, some more titles, but I mean, they're going to start getting losses on their ledgers if they don't be careful. It's going to be Gamboa and Wama all over again. They were offered $5 million to fight, didn't do it, and it just fell apart. And I think they're going to be in a similar situation sooner than later, unless they start taking some strides to get into the ring together.
Right.
I mean, these guys start facing each other like they could. I mean, these guys seem to have enough talent, each one of them, to be like another Trinidad, Whitaker, Corte, De La Hoya sort of lineup. But to your point, they're just not making them yet. So,
well, I think the overall climate of boxing is changing. We've had unification. We've got 2 or 3 unifications coming up. You're going to have the other fighters who are going to want to be in that kind of limelight kind of situation. And as everyone knows, if one fighter says, I want to fight you, and the one says, I want to fight you, and they go on public record and say they want to fight each other, everybody who's affiliated with those 2 guys are going to make it happen because they said so publicly. So with all these unifications coming up, I think that these other fighters, Garcia and all these other guys, are going to say, I want that opportunity. I want to take the same kind of steps as those guys are taking. So I'm thinking this next 2 years, we're going to see a lot of these guys who were hiding from each other change just because the bigger fish, if you will, are starting to fight each other. The Charlo, the Spence, you've got Canelo out there. You've got even the ladies are undisputed. Franchon, she's undisputed. You've got some other things happening. So I think that pressure is going to cause the other guys who have been, hiding to come out.
Right.
And exactly to expand on that, basically, when you can see competitive fights, people are not going to watch these guys in non-competitive fights. So you're right. They're going to have to step it up. They're going to have no choice. They're going to become irrelevant because there's too many good fights to watch to put up with this much longer. And they're going to take themselves right out of the mix if they don't start, taking these fights.
Yeah. Well, speaking of good fights, let's just go right into first gear here. How about the towering inferno, Sebastian Fundora? Did you guys see that fight?
That guy's a rough customer.
I did.
Wow. Yeah. So we're talking about the Erickson Lubin against Sebastian Fundora. It was a fight that took place on April 9th, Saturday, April 9th on Showtime. And yeah, man, that was something. And he's a really unusual specimen.
As he is, definitely. Lubin knew he had to get inside that reach, but there was no reach to get inside because that tall man fights on the inside. So he stood in there with him, and he lost at that type of discipline. He simply got beat up inside, that he did. Now, I got to give it to Fundora, if I pronounce that correctly, his discipline in taking that knee when he got hurt, and being able to get around and get back into his rhythm. Right. Usually, all you guys know, when a fighter gets, hurts another fighter, he's vulnerable because he's going in for the kill. Right. So when he got hurt, he was smart enough to do that, and I was impressed with that. But maybe if Fundora can ever use that reach advantage just somewhat when he's hurt or when he's in a situation, just so he can breathe himself and then go back to what he does well, which he does fight very well on the inside. And he's built up a little more, his legs a little thicker, his punches are they're torqued correctly. I mean, I'm really liking him because I remember when he was kind of a little wild, but he seemed okay. And Lubin fought very well. He fought the best he could. He was in a situation this other guy was just better.
You just said it. The funniest part about it is the only possible strategy to have is to get inside. But unfortunately, that's the worst strategy to have because you get there and he likes to bang on the inside. So you can't, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's a tough situation.
Yeah. I mean, look, Fundora was down in round 2. So he went down in round 2. Oh no, Lubin was down in round 2, and then Fundora was down in round 7 of the fight. Right? Is that right? And the fight only went 9 rounds. So that was a hell of a fight. It was a hell of a fight, and I just can't underscore. How does this big guy fight on the inside?
What's the ultimate payoff for him at this point? What are we looking at? What's the fight down the road or sooner than later?
He's mandatory. He's a mando for who? What weight class is that? But he's a mando. He is a mando at this point for somebody there.
Well,
so there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's real close.
Yeah, he's super welterweight. So
154.
We have 154.
Yeah. Just historical question. Do you guys know if he started at 154 his pro career? I don't immediately know the answer. I feel like
he moved down in weight, to be honest. I think he started a little bit higher.
So in 2016, he started he started at 162. And then he fought his second fight. His second pro fight was at 172.4. And a quarter. He dropped to 159, then he dropped to 147, fought back up at 59. He's been floating around at 55. Most of his fights were from 50 to 55, and 52, 53, and then his most recent fight was at 153 and a quarter. So
actually an interesting approach because I feel like there's certain guys that if they have that much of a height or dimension advantage, they'd start to. The question would be how long they could keep it down their weight. But it seems like he's already experimented in a couple of weight classes, intentionally or otherwise. And maybe this is his comfortable one. That's a dangerous proposition for anybody that might be fighting for a title. If this is where he feels like he could cut weight and be the most effective, because he looked very effective at the end of the day.
Well, he's 6'5". For y'all listening out there, he's 24 years old. He's 6'5". I mean, things are going to get real for him pretty soon. At 154.
Yeah.
And just a side note, that whole family is just the nicest family in the world. I used to see them when they were just starting out on some of the, basically like not the club shows, but like the smaller shows for the bigger promoters that were, in association with or run for somebody else for them.
Yeah.
that whole family is just the nicest family you can't imagine. I mean, so I watched him. You just wish him nothing but the best, and I hope he goes really, really far. And you know, when you first see them at that level, you don't know what's going to happen. But every time I see him take another step up the ladder, I'm really excited for him. He deserves it, and he's just a humble guy.
Yeah.
If I'm media,
65% KO ratio too, you guys. So I mean, he can put it out there.
if I'm media, I'm loving him just because of his height and how I can frame all that. He's really popular just because of his height. I can see all the work that can be done behind him whenever he does a fight.
Yeah, he's
right.
Positively.
Boxrec's got him ranked at number 3 behind Brian Castano and Jamal Charlo. So I guess he's going to maybe get the winner of that, or maybe fight down to Tim Tszyu.
Well, that's what they were speculating. He would be the Mando for Charlo.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean that's I'd like to see that fight. I mean, considering
that's a good fight,
right?
Yep.
I don't know too much about the Castano fight, if that's a good fight, because according to Castano's last fight, this Castano, some people thought that he beat Charlo, so that was a very good fight. He did a good showing for himself.
The funny thing, I think the smaller Charlo, I don't know what it is. He just looks unmotivated at times. I think every fight he's been in where it's been the loss, who's the guy who beat him, then he ended up knocking him out. I just think he gets bored. I think he's the better fighter in those fights, and he just gets either outworked or something happens, because I think he's very, 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 very talented. I just think it's a motivation thing or whatever it might be. I don't know. I can't figure him out.
Well, this time he's definitely got the motivation, because it was postponed. There was all the scuttlebutt about the other guy wasn't really hurt. Then he went on social media and said this and said that. And Charlo's a very volatile type of individual. His ego is out of this world. He feels, disrespected and all of that. And as you know, as a fighter, you feed on that type of thing for your training and for your upcoming fights. So he's had his fill of all of that. So if he's unmotivated, I'd be very surprised, because he got that cup feel when the first fight was, the rematch was put off.
I'm just, maybe not anymore, but I'm just saying in his prior, hiccups where he has the loss and the draw, I just find that I thought he was the better fighter in both of those by a big margin. I think he got either outworked or whatever the case was. I don't know what you want to call it, unmotivated, just fell asleep in his fights, whatever. I think he was clearly the better fighter in those fights, though.
Well, so speaking of better fighter, let's get into this Marlon Esparza and Nakio. How do you say her name? Nakio Fujika or something like that. Did you guys see that fight?
Yes, I saw that fight.
What'd you think of that fight?
It was closer than the cards.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
So I mean, it was close. They're setting her up for the Sinisa Estrada rematch. Clearly, that's the goal. So she was going to get that. Anything that was close, she was going to get as far as the rounds go.
Right. And
basically, that's the money fight they're thinking down the road. So they want to get her back. She's done nothing to get. She's a little bit better. But the difference in talent in the first Estrada fight was she didn't win a single round, and I don't think she's gotten anywhere. I don't think the talent's grown at all. So they have to make her look as good as possible to try to sell the fight, which they did a great job of doing. And the cards were absolutely ridiculous. I thought she might have won by 2 rounds. I think one of the cards had her winning every single round.
Right.
So, I think they had a little bit of an agenda, which I understand.
It's 2 judges had her winning every round. So it was kind of a slap in the face to the Japanese fighter. However,
how did you have it yourself? Like, as a judge, how did you see it?
Well, she was scoring off the back foot. And as you know, unless you have the discipline as a judge and boxing, that it's about scoring. It's not about who's going forward. It's effective aggressiveness. You can be aggressive, not be effective. So as I watched the fight, I saw her scoring enough to win the rounds, to win the fight. Okay. But, a layman is going to see, well, she was the Japanese fight was all over her. She should have, she was robbed, but she wasn't. She got hit cleanly, scoring punches, scoring area, the usual discipline as being a judge. So I'm not upset about it because I saw what I saw being who I am. So I was good with it. But moving forward, I don't believe, that her skill set is any better, as you said earlier.
She won the fight, absolutely. I don't think she won every round. I just think some rounds she didn't do enough to win them. Even the aggressiveness I would say later in the fight, maybe like 6, 7, and 8, I don't think she did enough, and I think she let her get back into the fight a little bit. She was never in the fight. She was like not out of it, but not in it. You know what I mean? That happens all the time where, maybe who knows what it was, but I think she had her moments. She probably won 3 rounds at best. Esparza won 7 rounds easily.
Well, the judges had it. The 3 judges had it 190, 97, 93, and 190.
97, 93, I think is about right, to be honest.
That was more accurate than 90.
I think that's where I would have had it, somewhere around there. Yeah. I don't think she got robbed. I know she didn't win the fight, but I think she did enough in maybe 2 or 3 rounds to win those rounds. So it wasn't going to make a difference anyway, but I think she did manage to win at least 2 or 3 rounds.
Well, Mara, she's basically 12-1 with 1 KO. So what's next for her?
They're trying to make the Sinisa Estrada fight. That's the whole goal. They've been, putting them on the same show. Sinisa does her commentary. They had each other in the arena when it was time, and that's the one they're trying to do. So that's going to be as far as another ass whooping. So that'll be that end of her.
Okay.
I ask you guys just a question. Who is the pound for pound biggest puncher in women's boxing right now, in your opinion? Or just based on the numbers?
On the numbers, it's the her name escapes me. She has 31 fights and like 20-something knockouts or something. She is definitely up there. Her name escapes me right now. I see her face, but yeah, she has the highest ratio if you want to look at it like that.
Okay.
There's not a lot of one punch power in the women's ranks,
Right.
That's fine. That's fine.
I just always remember back to when I was watching back in my college years, Vonda Ward and Ann Wolfe. I'm like, where are those explosive?
Ann Wolfe was a whole different story. I mean, that's someone,
Yeah.
Well,
that's powerful.
Ali stayed away from her, boy.
Coal miner's daughter.
She stayed away from her too.
Crack too. Yeah.
You don't want to be messing with Ann Wolfe.
Yeah. Neither one of them wanted to fight Ann Wolfe. Neither one of them.
And I don't blame them.
Her career was cut short because she couldn't get those big fights.
So pound for pound.
You know that she was in the Wonder Woman movies. You know that?
Was she?
Yeah, she made nice money in the one. She's a nice lady too. Like I don't know her well at all.
Who was in the Wonder Woman?
Ann Wolfe is in the Wonder Woman movies.
Oh, yeah?
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, watch them again. You'll see her. She's in there. She got a credited role.
So, Paul, just to touch base, just to get back to your question.
Okay.
This is an unofficial pound for pound list, right? But you got Katie Taylor, number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Amanda Serrano, number 2. Sinisa Estrada, number 3. Delphine Person, number 4. Marlon Esparza, number 5. And guess who's number 6? I got to add her. Michaela Meyer.
Where was Shields?
Oh, man, she's number 10. And then followed by Alicia Baumgardner, which those 10? Are 2 sleepers, man. I mean, Baumgardner.
How could she be 10?
I know. How could Baumgardner be 11? She just won a title, I think. But
Shields is in the top 4. I mean, no matter how if you're her worst enemy, you don't put her in the top 4, there's something wrong.
Well,
and if she's not above Esparza, I'm crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, Esparza has a lopsided loss on her record. Shields has not even been. She's beaten girl. She beat the Hammer girl and everyone else they threw at her. Yeah. How many titles does she have? She has like 13 fights and 8 titles.
Yeah, she's undisputed.
How the hell is she number 10?
I don't know why she's ranked number 10. But I'm not going to cite the source. But I mean that ranking could shift by whoever's doing the rankings, right? So how that works, right? We're going to talk about that later on tonight, aren't we? Right, Paul?
Yes, indeed.
Oh
Yeah.
boy. So
I just wanted
real
to make
quick.
sure I wasn't missing like some sort of Bernie Shavers type female out there that just isn't getting the right airplay right
She,
now.
Yeah.
hey, she is somewhere. She's somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let's take a moment and have a look ahead in major boxing events that are coming up. I'm sure.
How about
you
the
guys,
Spence Ugas? We're not going to talk about that. I was
no,
excited
we're
about
gonna,
that.
we're gonna get in there. We're not there yet. We got an agenda, man. We got an
Okay.
agenda. That's coming. That's coming. But this is just a little fill for the fans out there because they want to know what's coming up. And so on April 30th in New York City on the Zone, we got the Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano fight. That's a big one. Are we supposed to be going to that fight, by the way?
Yes, Mark, you got to let me know for sure because we're going to have special seats, and we'll get to spend a little time with Sinisa.
Yeah, cool.
I'll
Awesome.
be there as well. One of my clients is in the co-features, so
Perfect.
So good. So in Las Vegas on May 7th, we've got Canelo Alvarez versus Dimitri Bivol. Ho, 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 ho. Comments?
Well, we're looking at opportunity for him to, put himself in the record books. I really think it's going to be an easy fight for him. I don't really see any opposition, really, maybe 2 or 3 rounds, but once he gets inside, it's basically over. I watched both of them extensively the past couple of weeks, back to back to back, all their fights, try to find what particular style is similar to each other as they fought in their career. And Canelo's just so far ahead of his curve. It's not even funny. So it's going to be, it's nice hype and it's going to look good and all that, but he'll win easily. My concern is, as I said last time, for him to drop from 75 to 68, because now he has to fight our boy GGG. So he's got to drop that weight. Now, maybe he can get out of his contract and not honor that second fight and stay there at 75 and go get Bivol. Well, I don't know. Bivol, rather. I don't know.
Well, if the plot thickens, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of news.
And I think you're right about. I think Bivol's just a little too slow. He can't overcome that. Canelo's going to be, just so much faster. It's just you're physically outmatched, and that's going to be the problem in this one. So I mean, I guess there's always a chance at a lucky punch. He's technically the bigger guy on paper, but it's going to be a very tough proposition. I think.
Okay,
I have a hard time,
This is a big one, you guys.
Oh, good.
May 14th, Jermell Charlo versus Brian Castano, the rematch. 12 rounds for the WBC, IBF, and WBA junior middleweight title. And Castano's WBO junior middleweight title as well. That's on the line as well. That's a big one coming up, man. After that, we've got the May 21st, we've got David Benavides versus David Lemieux. That should be a very good fight, folks.
Lemieux's in every fight with just on his punching power alone. He's the one guy out there capable of scoring a Buster Douglas type upset because of that power.
Oh yeah,
he's in every fight because of it.
Lemieux is a good fighter, man.
Yeah.
I've been watching him for years.
I think he's dropped a few notches though. I mean, he's taken some losses in a row kind. I think but he's still always going to have that power, and he can catch anybody on any given night. I think his stock has dropped a little bit. I think he's a little bit past his prime, but he's always dangerous. Is the best way to put it.
So, hey, what you got, Paul? Yeah, Paul's like, what you got about that?
Oh, I mean, Lemieux. I just gotta say that's like a puncher's delight as long as it lasts. But I tend to think Lemieux's lost a step in the last couple of fights too. So, I mean, he's gonna go hard while he's there, but he might get caught in the process. So,
But the only thing I can say about that is we know Benavides goes straight back. He goes straight back. He doesn't go to his right or his left when he's retreating or he's being attacked. He goes straight back. So when you have someone with punching power who's going to punch straight down the line, Benavides can get hit just because he doesn't have that discipline to move left or right when he's backing off. So with that, yes, he can get hit and get hurt and get stopped just because he doesn't do that.
Right.
So that's going to be an interesting thing. Now, if he goes in there, he's moving like he's supposed to be. Now, when you're in a firefight, you forget all your training. You know how that goes. You remember what you was taught from day one. And if he was taught from day one not to go back, I mean, if he didn't get the discipline to go, not to go straight back, he's going to resort to that.
Right.
So yes, I agree with John. He can get hit. His defense is just not there on that situation.
Okay, gentlemen. So in New York, May 28th, it's a pay-per-view on Showtime Boxing. We've got a title fight. Gervonta Davis versus Rolando Romero, 12 rounds for Davis's WBA regular lightweight title. Comments?
I mean, I like Davis by a lot. I don't see why people are, considering this a close fight, to be honest with you. I think Davis is on about at least one level up. That's my opinion. So I think they're just trying to make something out of nothing here. There's nothing to see here.
Ooh.
I mean, I see about 7-8 rounds and he flattens them.
I agree totally. It's a last cover contract fight. That entity is making sure that the money is spread around somewhat to Rolly. They're rewarding him for not messing with that girl for real. They already put in so many pieces of funding in for the fight, so they're able to at least get out of that what they put in. Rolly is absolutely too slow. It's going to be a surgical type beating. And if you've never been knocked down, you've never been hurt, you've never been knocked out, your ego makes you stand in there. And it's better to be knocked out so you just be concussed and you can go about your life. But when you take a beating like Wilder took and the beating that Ugas took, and Rolly's going to stand there and take that beating like that, you don't come back from that. So I'm hoping he goes ahead and get knocked out quickly so he can continue. But if he stands in there, he's going to take some really wicked stuff. And our boy does not care for him. The talk, the vernacular, the street, and all that. So he's really going to beat on him and back off of him, then get back on him and get back off of him, get on him and get back off of him. He wants to punish this guy. So he's throwing some shade at Flo at the same time. Oh man, it's this is beyond just in the ring.
I couldn't agree more, and all the stars are aligning for a beatdown. Then he's going to punish him.
You guys are making it real bleak for Rolly.
Poor Rolly. That's all I got to say.
You guys carved out a very bleak future for Rolly Romero. Rolly, I'm just saying, I'm going on the record. I wish you well. I hope you do great. It is a tough fight, and Tank is called Tank for a reason. So let's just leave it at that for now. We're going to come back to that at a later podcast for sure as we get closer to that fight. And finally, the last fight in our preview, in our view, is the Shakur Stevenson against Oscar Valdez, which actually is the one that makes me really, really excited. Harold.
Go, Paul.
Are you giving it to Paul? Throw it up to Paul.
I mean, Shakur Stevenson has looked like the most fundamentally sound fighter I've seen in a while. Well, not in a while. Mayweather's the most fundamentally sound fighter I've ever watched, but and he hasn't been going that long. But this guy's looking nice. I'd like to see him show a little more power as he ages. But obviously Valdez is a tough assignment, but Shakur really seems to have the discipline and game plan to knock off almost anyone. So from what I've seen so far, I like what I see from him. I haven't really seen him buzzed or touched yet.
Well, I'm excited to see this fight. I think Oscar Valdez is a different breed. So that's going to be a great fight. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Valdez a little bit, actually.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep.
No, I mean, I wouldn't. With no confidence.
Right.
No
so
confidence.
you're talking about upset. You're talking about like headline, Sunday morning headlines. Valdez does it. Valdez does the impossible, right? Dethrones Shakur. Yeah, I get it. So, and I agree. I think he has the ability to do that.
Well, Shakur is one of my favorite fighters, and I'm going to just briefly say this. He was on record saying that he wanted to fight Floyd Mayweather at one time. And the commentator said, which one did you want to fight? He said, not the pretty boy, not the one who was knocking everybody out, not the one who was aggressive physically, I wanted to fight the one who had to use his mind and his guile and his experience to dominate fighters, not physically. He said, I want to match up with him mentally, not physically. So for him to be able to understand that there was two different Floyds, and the best one was the one that was mental, that had the mental capacity, and he wants to match up with him. So if this gentleman has that type of understanding of the sport mentally, and he does have, hand speed and foot speed, and he has the instinct mentally, I can't see anybody touching him. That's why I like him, not because of the power, not because he can move. It's just that when it comes to adjusting mentally, he's able to do so. And I've seen him do it so many times. So he's only going to get better and better and better. And to me, this is a walkover.
Interesting.
We'll find out soon enough. We'll find out soon enough, right?
Yeah, well, for those of you that are tuning in, if you'd like to make a comment on that, please do so. You can do that on YouTube, and just enter your comments in the live chat. We'd love to know what you think. And otherwise, we're gonna leave that. We're gonna leave that till fight night, because that's going to be an interesting fight. And I wonder what DraftKings or some of the betting outlets actually have on that particular fight, what the odds are. Does anyone know?
I don't gamble. Wrong person.
I think for the masses, it makes sense to make Shakur like a 3 to 4 to 1 favorite. Yeah. More people know the name. He's more popular in the mainstream. So that would be the way to go. That's usually how it works. So I'm going to guess that Shakur is going to be about a 3 or 4 to 1 favorite. Maybe it would be my guess.
Mm-hmm. But the money is to be made on the other side, on the Oscar Valdez side, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but a casual fan never heard Oscar Valdez. He knows Shakur from the Olympics and everything else, so that's why you make it 3 to 4 to 1.
Right.
It's probably not that. It's probably a little closer than that for real, but I think that's where they'll set it at.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's switch gears and let's get into this topic, Harold. I need the update on the Cuban government releasing fighters. Can we talk a little bit about that? Can you lay that out for us?
Well, we know in 1957, Castro banned the Cuban situation from going pro in an effort to keep what you want to call it, church and state, however you want to do it, away from the masses from the world. And as you know, you had all the defections and all those great guys, lost a lot of their situation. Tefelo Stevenson was offered a huge amount of money to fight Ali back in the day, and he couldn't do so because of that situation. There was a lot of lobbying for them to do that. The world would have seen Cuba's style and all that, but he didn't let it happen. So it just recently been approved for them to do this. So their first thing is they got a Cuban team that's running around the world fighting other teams, and they're being paid for this, and they're in a tournament. So what I'm looking at in the next 6 months or so, you're going to see people leaving. You have all these promoters running over there now trying to snatch these guys up and get them over here. So in the next 6 months or so, we're going to start seeing them on the lower ranks coming on through. So I'm happy to see that.
John, talk to me about that. As a manager, what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, there's going to be a bunch of, the Cubans are historically great fighters. So, I mean, there's going to be a bunch of talent out there. I mean, unfortunately, one way to look at it is they're going to, lack of a better word, it's going to be possible to swindle them. They're any money's a lot of money. And I hope that they're taken care of somehow. That's a situation where it could go bad. I mean, you're going to have some guys worth a lot more than, their values perceived to be, and vice versa. It's going to be interesting how the kind of contracts they get. And like I said, I think most people are going to try to downplay their value to them. Kind of like Rigondeaux. He never made any real money. His biggest pay, they're almost like, what's the best way to put it is they're coming from nothing as far as money goes. So they're happy to get any. And that's always a recipe to be able to screw somebody. And I hope that's not the case here. So I hope they fall into the right hands more than anything else.
Well, Paul, what do you have to say about that? Because that sounds like you're going to be getting a lot of clients.
I
That
certainly
goes
welcome
down
them
like
to
that.
make sure they didn't get worked. But my concern is actually a little different when I started hearing about Cuba allowing it. I'm wondering if there's a catch there, if there's some, what happens if these guys that defected come back to fight in Cuba? I mean, would they even feel comfortable doing that? But as far as the new talent coming in, yeah, I mean, certainly to John's point, I mean, these guys don't know two bottle caps and a dead frog from $1 million contract. They just see money that they don't otherwise have necessarily, some of them.
Right.
So,
Right.
and that could be, obviously it's been taken, boxing's not short on situations where fighters get taken advantage of that don't know what their value is.
Well, I do think
So it should be
there's one
interesting to
bright
see.
spot. There's one bright spot here that should be noted, and that is that these fighters that are coming and getting this opportunity to fight in America, that could be really, really great for the boxing
sure.
fans. The boxing fans will be treated to, a variety of different weight classes and fighters that, have previously not been seen at all. So, and the Cuban team is
Right.
outstanding. So I think that there's something to be said for if you're a boxing fan where you may be getting more than your money paid for if you get a chance to see some of these wonderful fighters.
If I was a mid-level promoter, I'd be salivating because I can pick up 3 or 4 of these dudes, man, and run around on this middle circuit and just kill. Because this guy's going to have this. He's got it. Now he won't have any opposition, but he's got it.
Yeah.
And just because you've got 1 or 2, and you're in the mid-level and they're 0-1 or whatever they are going to be on point. So.
Right.
The average fan who goes to the club level, they will be happy the next 6 months or so because they're going to see some real skilled guys on that level.
Yeah,
that's actually a great point. It's going to be great for the mid-level guys. You're right, to be able to get into the mix. Someone's going to rise to the top from there, and you're going to have a mid-level guy that has a big-time fighter with low risk. He's not going to have to pay a lot of money for him, or as much as he'd have to pay for, say, like an Olympian from the United States.
If I'm a mid-level promoter and I've got 1 Cuban fighter, I'm on point. I'm going to sell. I'm going to have good shows.
Wow.
Agreed. Has anybody, speaking of that, has anybody heard Rigondeaux's situation? Is he doing any better?
Oh, right. I haven't seen anything since the initial report on the burning.
I look every day to try. Like, the guy's in my prayers. I really want him to recover from that. But I mean, they said at one point he could barely see light. But they did say, like, if the first 48 hours is going to matter as to what happened. So I'm really hoping for a full recovery for that guy. I mean, that guy, just a hard luck kind of guy.
Can I just ask you to just, expand upon that? Just get a little deeper into what you're speaking about.
So he was cooking rice in a pressure cooker. It blew up in his face, and he was 100% blind. He saw black. And then they said the next day he was able to see, like, light from the sun, and they were excited about it. And I was checking every day I get up and I Google it every day to see about an update on his condition, and there's been absolutely nothing. So I'm just hoping he at least gets to the point where he can have like a normal life. I mean, if you're just seeing a light from the sun, that's no way to live. So I'm really, I truthfully and honestly, I wake up every day concerned, and I'm hoping to get some kind of I'm not even worried about him fighting again. I'm just worried about the poor guy being able to see.
Yeah, for real. I mean, that's very serious.
It's disheartening. Yeah, it bothers me. I lost sleep over it. It's just a bad. I just, I admire the guy tremendously, and you don't want to wish that on anybody, but that's just disgusting. I mean, it's just tough.
Sad.
That's
terrible.
I really want to know what's going on with the guy. I hope he's doing exceptionally well.
Yeah. No. We all. I mean, our prayers are going out to Rigondeaux and his family, and hope that he will make a full recovery for sure. Losing your eyesight is very, very serious business, and So we'll be praying for him. The fans of the Boxing Breakdown, we ask that you guys pray for Rigondeaux, and that's a very, very sad bit of news there. So on another note, let's flip the switch and get up into the Spence versus Ugas recap, man. You guys, this is going to blow up right now. Get ready. All right, so let's start with you, Paul.
Very thorough performance by Spence. Actually, going in, I thought Ugas was he is deceptively good. I mean, he really put played a tune on Pacquiao and adjusted nicely in that fight to do what he had to do. And I thought if Spence had lost a step at all between all the various medical issues and delays and getting back into the ring, Ugas was not going to be a great night for him. But he made the adjustments. And really, the only particular criticism I heard of him afterwards is that there's some suspicion that he was fighting closer than he used to. Maybe some people were attributing that to his detached retina, maybe not seeing as well, and thus not fighting from as far away. But otherwise, it was a pretty thorough domination, and something I personally did not notice. I just saw him adjusting very well to the guy in front of him. And Ugas almost sort of mentally closing up shop, trying, but as his eye got worse and worse, it just seemed like a lost cause after a while. And props to him for gutting it out until he was told he couldn't. But it looked like the fight got away from him as the eye started to close throughout those rounds. So nice performance. I think he's not an easy night for Crawford. I can't say he beats Crawford, but coming off of this fight or not, but not an easy fight by any stretch of the imagination. I look forward to seeing that one finally.
Yeah, so Errol Spence advances to 28-0 with 22 big wins coming by way of KO. The Ugas fight was there was a TKO in the 10th round, stoppage because of the eye. And Harold, what do you think of that stoppage?
Well, just off the top, the first 3 rounds, as I said earlier, he was kind of fresh. He was kind of throwing some power punches, trying to find his rhythm with Ugas. Ugas was in there with him. He kind of settled down. He did have his mouthpiece knocked down. People say he was hurt and all that, but all of us here are student boxing. We know what we saw. It got knocked out of his mouth. He started looking for it. When you look for it, you take your eyes off your opponent. And he got hit. Then he got hit again, still looking for that mouthpiece, and got hit again. He bounced off the ropes. He was never hurt. He was never stepping in potholes. He just got knocked off his rhythm. I didn't think he was hurt at all. Then that next round, he started dominating. From that round on, he took control and dominated that fight. So in a sense, that mouthpiece being knocked out put him in another gear. And that other gear, he rode that gear to the end.
Right. Well, I mean, Ugas coming off of a really spectacular performance against one of my all-time favorites, Manny Pacquiao. I thought he did an amazing job in that fight, and to watch him get beat down the way he did, I felt particularly sad for him.
I was at I believe it was Stavern versus Areola at the Galen Center, and he lost. And then and Ugas was on the undercard, and he ended up falling to something like 10-3. And I remember thinking to myself, this poor guy is now going to be a trial horse. He's never going to make any real money, and I felt terrible. He was a bronze medalist, and I just thought they just didn't move this guy right. And I'm thinking it's over for the guy. So when he kind of brought it back together, he showed me something that I didn't expect to see. He really he regrouped, he got himself back on track, and I'm just so happy that guy made some real money in boxing. I almost don't care about the outcomes of these fights, because when I saw him sitting at, I think it was 10-3, and I'm saying to myself, he's gonna be a Showbox B-side, and he's gonna be making $10,000 a fight, and I truly saw that. Then he worked his way back into a Porter fight, and people thought he might have won that decision. It got himself, and he's probably made $5 million. So that night when I saw him at the Galen Center, I'm thinking he's never going to make any real money. What is this poor guy going to do with himself? So you know what? I could care less about the outcomes of these fights. I'm just so happy this guy got himself back in the mix. He won a world title, and he made some real money. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. He came over here, and it was you don't understand how close it was to being over, and he just never gave up. So that perseverance should be a model for everybody. Don't give up, because you don't know what can happen. And he truly turned it into something good, and I'm so happy for the guy.
Yeah, man. And he's Cuban, which means that he can be a role model for the ones that are coming over, because he has splashed his wealth and cars and money and women. He got a fine woman on media. so the rest of the world can see how he came from, and he defected 3 times. They caught him twice. He had to go back and forth. So he's got a great story. I think one of his problems, John, was he never embraced the English language. But yet his work ethic caused him to get those good fights. So and he did go a road that some American fighters couldn't go. They couldn't lose those kind of fights and still get his opportunity as he did. And he took advantage of it. So he's a role model for the Cuban fighter. He's a role model for any fighter who has lost more than 3 fights, right? And he'll still get some work out of this fight he had with our boy Spence. So as you said, when he was 10-3, it was a negative situation, but he did turn himself around, and he is somewhat of an American type boxing, not dream, but accomplishment.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you look at the losses, I mean, in hindsight, as it's happening, you have a different take on it because they're all prospects beating him. In hindsight, if I'm not mistaken, I looked at it later on down the road, and he lost to tough fighters. So he just got, just bad breaks and tough fights. He probably shouldn't have been in. Look, at that point, the way things are done now, but he made it work.
He lost to Johnny Garcia back in, that goes way back. Let's see. Johnny Garcia was back in,
I think it was 13 or 14.
Yeah, it was 2012, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, 2012. And then he lost to Emmanuel Robles in 2014. Followed with so there were 2 losses in a row. The next loss was Amir Ahmed Imam. He lost against
Amir Imam. He was a pretty named fighter, but that's the one I'm talking about at the Galen Center in Los Angeles. After that, I'm looking at it thinking like this guy's done.
Yeah,
there's no bright side in this one. I truly believed he was going to be a B-side on Showbox fights, getting beat up by guys that were 12-0, and it certainly didn't turn out that way.
He put together 8 straight wins after that fight, and then he lost to Sean Porter, the gatekeeper,
which was a very, very, very close fight. And most people thought he won.
Yeah, it was a split decision. It was 12. It went the full 12 rounds, and it was a split decision loss. I think the scores were 113, 115, 112, 116, and 117, 111. So yeah. And then, now he has this loss against Errol Spence. But I think more to the point is it's more about the orbital bone breakage, because this particular loss, what concerns me about that is when that happens to your orbital bone, I can't imagine that is an easy fix. It's not something you can naturally come back and fight at this level again. It's not going to be easy.
And I don't know that he could beat anybody at the elite level. I think he's like not a full level down, but about a half a level down. I think he's an outstanding fighter. And I just think that he reaches maximum potential, and that's all anybody could ever hope for. He did it. He made a lot of money doing so. He had a good career, and he came back from the dead as far as boxing goes. 10-3.
Yeah.
How many people come back from 10-3 to be beating Manny Pacquiao?
And he got, as I said, Pacquiao's on his resume.
Right.
Exactly. So, You know what? I'm happy for the guy. I'm not going to take this as a bad thing. I look at it more like, and we all understand this, we're in the boxing business. It's getting to the big fight more than winning it. It's harder to get there than win it.
Yeah, for sure.
Very few people get there. I was reading something a little while back. I think 1% of all fighters ever have a $10,000 payday. People just get under the assumption like Floyd's making $50 million, so the guy in the co-main must be making $10 million. I had a fighter I was handling at one point. He got offered a co-main event on Manny Pacquiao. I'm not sure who was going to be. I'm sorry, a Canelo Alvarez co-main event on a pay-per-view. What do you think we were offered for that fight? Co-main event on a Canelo Alvarez pay-per-view. Co-main event, even fight. What do you think the purse offer was?
$15,000.
$180,000. So it ain't $5 million like people think. So and then people don't understand when you see these cards and say that's a really weak card. You got to pay the guys. The better the fight is, you got to pay them. So if you're paying a main event guys $50 million, you don't have money to pay the co-main event 10.
Yeah, for sure.
So you try to put something together that people want to see that's competitive, but it's certainly not going to be a big fight most of the time. The Don King days are over with 4 guys fighting for, multiple titles.
Right. Well, don't tell him that.
I'm not saying a word. Won't say a word.
Yeah. So, all right, let's move it. Let's move right along. We're cruising right here for bruising. We are on to what happens to Errol Spence next. Where does he go next? We know there's Bud is in the mix. So I wonder if you guys want to chop that up a little bit. Let's talk about Terrence Crawford.
I'll jump on it right quick.
Go.
I'll be succinct. In the ring, when he said, I'll go and take his SHIT also, that was great. When the fight was over, he said that he wanted to unify. That was great. He's been tweeting and all that in the past 3 or 4 days that he wants to do that. His tweets have been answered by Bud directly. So they have decided they actually want to fight. So as far as I can see right now, if the fighters have any kind of clout, which Esquire would know, and of course, John, you would know, if they really want to fight, it can happen, regardless of what the political situation is. Now, Bud is free as of he's not handcuffed. And we know Spence basically he can call his shots somewhat only because he does so well at pay-per-view. Bud can't do pay-per-view yet, but he will just because of the furor that's being put together because of these two. So I look forward to that fight. I think it's going to be great for our generation. We're all still kind of young. We don't have to go back and say, oh, I remember when. We can actually say that this is happening during our lifetime.
Let me ask you this, guys. What do you think? I mean, Lennox Lewis and Riddick Bowe didn't happen. Lennox Lewis stalked him everywhere. Riddick Bowe did everything he could in his power not to fight Lewis. That's the reason that didn't happen. Why hasn't this happened yet? Like, what's the real reason? Not what we're hearing and this and that, because you're 100% right. This could happen if they want it to happen. What's the real reason this fight has not happened yet?
I think it's because he was handcuffed to Bob.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's that top-ranked PBC divide for a while that kind of got in the way of that, unfortunately.
So you don't think it's either guy?
Money.
You don't think it's one of them that's
money.
Avoiding it? Okay.
It's money. It's money. Not enough money to pay. Just not enough money to pay what he's looking for.
Well, they're saying that they may get 10 apiece.
A decent day.
Well, we far be it for us to speculate right here on the Boxing Breakdown because that's all we ever do. But at the end of the day, the list of why Terrence Crawford, hasn't been in the big fights. The list is long. I mean, you can, and it's continually evolving. It's still evolving, So, I mean, we're just excited that they're talking about putting this fight together. Let's see if it gets out of the war room. If it gets out of the war room and it actually gets on the, to the marketing people's tables and it actually, gets out to the world, that would be amazing, an amazing thing.
Well, Floyd is campaigning very hard to get Bud to sign. Now, Bud doesn't speak, but Floyd sure does. So if them two can get together, he'll have a built-in mouthpiece. He'll have a built-in platform to get himself aligned with Spence, because Spence does speak and he is volatile, and they will have some nice press conferences. If they do that 5, 6, 7 city jaunt of the press conference, it's going to be all that we want it to be.
Right.
Because without fail, you let it simmer long enough, it loses everything. Who would even pay to see Wilder versus AJ right now? 5 years ago, that they could have split $100 million in England. Now they get $2 million apiece if they're lucky. So you let it simmer. We can name 50 fights that simmered too long and never happened. And I just think they better take the money when they can get it, just in case. It's boxing, They're eventually going to lose to somebody, or anything could happen, or whatever. So I think they better hurry the hell up if they want to make this as big as it could be. It simmered long enough.
The speculation is November.
Okay, that would be perfect.
Yep.
All right, so let's move right along. Let's move to the Fury versus Whyte. Tyson Fury against Dillan Whyte is happening, Harold. It's happening. Not only, how big is it happening? Tell us.
The largest fight in the 21st century, 94,000 people have bought tickets. But the split is atrocious. 80-20, my gosh. but we don't know what the back end is going to be for Whyte. We don't know how it's going to be compensated for Whyte. We don't know that. They haven't, said that right now. It's on some President's Day, some King's Day, something over there in Europe that is a monumental day, like our President's Day or whatever happened over there. So that is hyped it also. We know Whyte has this great backstory. He was 13 when he came over here. He dropped a kid at 13. He got all these kids, this, that, and the other. He's gone through, he's been shot, he's been stabbed, this, that, and other. So there's a lot there with him as far as just his backstory is concerned. And then we got the, Fury's backstory, the drugs, this, that, all. So all of that has parlayed into 94,000 people sold out for this fight.
That's incredible. That's quite an accomplishment. I mean, if you're part of that Count the Money team, if you're if you're a COO or, CFO of that company, that's quite a that's amazing that they were able to.
If you would have told me 3 years ago there'd be a fight selling that many tickets over there and AJ wasn't in it, I'd tell you you're crazy.
Right? Exactly. Agreed. So this is big news, people. I mean, this is a big fight. And quite honestly, I've been hearing on the wire a lot of news, a lot of people feeling that, Dillan Whyte can upset Tyson Fury. I don't know if that's just fodder for the cannons or if that's, what do you guys think about that?
Are they going to let him use weapons like a hammer or a knife? Then
Dillan Whyte. Listen. I did not say that, Dillan Whyte. I was just asking the question. That was John Maresca. Yep, that's who said that. So.
Whyte could pop. Whyte's tough, battle tested, but he also has shown himself at times to be a bit chinny. And I think end of the day, Fury's not a one-punch guy, but he knows how to find you repeatedly, and I think that'll make the difference unless he happens to ace him. And but even if he does drop him hard, we saw him get up in the first Wilder fight. So Fury, like Terminator 2 or The Undertaker, whatever comparison you want to make. So
I just look at Whyte. I'm sorry.
What's it? Because they just you really have to destroy Fury to leave him on the canvas for the full count. And I don't see him now pointing him necessarily either, unless he has to drop him several times. So this doesn't look like an easy path to victory for Whyte here. I don't think it'll be a complete rout, but I don't think it'll be an easy path to victory.
Right.
I think he'll be in it, but he won't be in it, kind of thing. He'll hang tough a little while, but he'll never be a real threat. That's how I take it. And if you're a big fan of Whyte, you can convince yourself he's in the fight, and you know how that goes. But it's not going to be the case.
Yeah. Right. I just look at his losses. I look at Whyte's losses. You look at those fights. He's a beat too slow. Period. He will get touched up.
Yep.
Style nightmare for him it's a style nightmare. This is an absolute. You can't get a worse style matchup. It couldn't be any better for Fury, and no worse for Whyte.
That's why he's calling for the knockout. That's why he's just verbally abusing Whyte. That's why Whyte is not even speaking during the press conferences, because he knows he can't out-talk him, can't do it. And he knows that I'm in a situation where I'm not going to win. So instead of me getting beat down at the press conference and everything else, I'll just keep my mouth shut and I'll take my beating like Wilder took his.
Harold, I don't think anybody's
get the biggest payday of his life in the process.
I don't think anybody has told Dillan Whyte that.
So. Any boxer who doesn't think they're going to win, you don't want to handle them. Like when you manage fighters, if they don't say, "Hey, you want to fight this guy," if they don't ask you when and where, you probably shouldn't be handling the guy.
Right.
That's
you shouldn't put him in that fight for sure.
And you just any fighter that doesn't think he's going to win a fight is probably not going to be very successful. I know guys, loss after loss, they still want to fight the best, and that's the real champions. They want to fight anybody whenever they can. Whyte truly believes he's going to win this fight. I have no doubt in my mind about that, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move right along then here into the Charlo versus Castano fight, the rematch. Comments and ors or buts.
I mean, I
I
think
think
Charlo's
Harold's point earlier on motivation was an interesting starting point for that one. But go ahead, John.
Well, just we know what's going on with that. We know it's it's been rescheduled, and we know we're going back to there. And the best part about it now is all old news. The new news is Bud is saying, well, if Spencer want to fight me, I'll go up there and I'll fight the winner between those two. I'll move up in weight and go take Charlo's belt.
Right.
So Charles been running his mouth. Oh, I'm pissed off at you for saying that, and I'm pissed off at what's his name saying that. But Bud is like, hey, I want all the smoke. So right now, Charles' motivation is not to be undisputed. It's to shut Bud up, because Bud's saying I can come up there and take yours, all four of yours at one time. So that's what I see right now between them. So the rest of all the stuff between them, I don't even care anymore. It's old news. It got postponed. It's going to happen. So what?
Well, I mean, look, we got to talk about it because it is news, right? So, and it's big news because a lot of the cards.
I'm jaded right now. I'm
yeah, I feel that. I like it. You're on fire tonight, bro. Like it's wonderful. It's wonderful to hear you so jazzed up. And you're coming across on the screen for the listeners or for the viewers. I mean, you are crystal clear, man. You look beautiful right now. And you're sounding really good. The only thing that concerns me is that you guys are not giving Brian Castano the credit that this guy deserves. This guy is a banger. He can fight.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, he can fight. I mean, we're talking about Charlo, but Castano could be the guy standing there at 154.
No, absolutely.
He had his best performance when he fought that guy the first time. He was mentally, physically there. He gave it all. It was it. He can't recreate that. He can't.
Wow.
He can't. He doesn't have the capacity to do it. He's done it. He blew his wad. Whatever you want to say, he's done. When he gets in there this time, he's not even going to have that kind of energy. He's done.
I know who's not going to the Dignity Health Center Park in Carson, California, and who's not going to get front row tickets to this fight. Well, at least not on the on the blue side. So, if you thought to call Brian Castano for some tickets, it's probably not going to work out for you, Harold.
I'm just looking at the fight, man. Women go on emotion, men go on facts, and facts are he fought his best fight. I mean, he was on point. But how many times can you create that, John? You know this.
100%. I mean, I couldn't agree more. He had his chance. He probably get overlooked a little bit. It won't be the case this time. You'll have a more motivated, prepared Charlo, and he won't be taken by surprise if that was everything points to exactly what we're being told right now. I don't think it's going to be a good fight. I think it's going to be a pretty wide decision kind of thing or a late stoppage and never competitive.
So check this out. The last time they fought was in July 17th of 2021, and it was a split decision loss for Castano. It went to 12 rounds, and the scores were 114 to 114. 117 to 111, and 113 to 114. That's how close that fight was. It wasn't a walkover at all.
Yeah, Harold's right. It's going to be this time.
All right. Well, we're just going to have to see. We're going to have to wait until May 14th for the rematch. And, I'd like to pump up the fights for you guys. Whoever's putting on this fight, I can't quite remember who the promoter is for that fight.
Gotta be a PBC show. Gotta be.
It's probably a PBC show, but whoever's putting it on, don't forget to send the check to the Boxing Breakdown. We would appreciate that. You can always send us a check, and we will make good use of the funds. Thank you very much in advance for that. And yeah, and don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button down below. You know, we just started our YouTube channel, and we're really excited for it, and we're hoping to grow it. And so you can help us do that by hitting the like and subscribe button and notifications for when we go live. And so now, finally, let's get into Paul. You have some very, very interesting news. I wonder if you could lay it out for the fans, listeners.
I could try, by virtue of the fact that the complaint itself is a bit sort of a hydra beast in some respects. But what you have in federal court in Pennsylvania is a lawsuit filed within the last week or two where a promoter, was Edward Mendy, and a couple other individuals, including 2 fighters, filed a lawsuit against notably Boxrec and the Association of Boxing Commissions, but also Daniel Kinahan and a few others are named in there, essentially saying that because, and there's a lot of stuff to unpack. I mean, it could almost be its own episode if this was more of a CLE than a boxing show. But essentially what Mendy and the others are saying is that they staged certain fights in the United Arab Emirates that because of an issue with Kinahan's point man there, and they report other things as far as Boxrec and Association Boxing Commissions. The fights didn't get recorded as fights that actually took place, and they're claiming all sorts. They're claiming some sort of antitrust violation. They're claiming a racketeering conspiracy. They're claiming some sort of civil rights claim. I'm not. It's just it's a sort of a meandering, far-reaching, but ultimately hard to verify. I see this being impossible to verify sort of complaint, where I think the takeaway is, if you haven't read about this yet, that if in fact Boxrec, that's regarded right now as basically the best record keeper or the record keeper for boxing, is leaving documentable fights off of its records for some reason or another, that troubles me. But it just doesn't feel like what's being alleged in the complaint, even if it has any basis in reality, could ever be proven at any point in court based on all the different the various claims and in the broad scope of them. I'm just not sure what they're going for here, but if it sheds a light on Boxrec, maybe not recording certain fights, that's problematic. But this complaint as a whole, to me, let's put it this way, if I were defense counsel on this, I'd be eating it alive on its 4 corners, because I don't feel like it makes out a claim for any of its causes of action successfully. But what it raises, I think, is more the interesting part, and that is the point, that, if it goes to the boxing press and all of a sudden people are saying, oh yeah, Boxrec didn't do right by me also, or ABC didn't do this for me also, maybe it gets a discussion going there.
Right.
But it just seems like a meandering, and I'm not saying patently meritless. I'm saying on the causes of action, ultimately meritless lawsuit. Probably.
I have Paul. I got 2 questions for you, 2 scenarios. Now, just two interesting ones here.
Okay.
Maybe there's a criteria those cards didn't reach, and is a rubric, and you didn't do this, this, and this. Number 1. Number 2. Say like CBS decides tomorrow, you know what? We're not gonna cover the presidential election. Do they have to? Does Boxrec have to put it up there? I mean, it's not a government agency. It's like, so you know what? We didn't want to put it up. CBS doesn't want to cover the presidential election. We don't want to put those cards up.
Well, that's an interesting 2-part question. I think to some extent, if you're looking to research, is a guy active? How many fights does this guy that might be fighting have? You'd like to think that Boxrec covers everything without much discretion either way. What was the first part of the question there? I'm sorry.
Like Boxrec just says, like I said, say CBS says we're not going to cover the presidential election. Boxrec says, you know what? We're just not going to put it up. Do they legally have to? They're not a government agency.
They do.
Well, I think that's the problem. Like, who's telling? Like, do they have to? I mean, for their own credibility, they should want to, but is there a legal obligation that spans internationally and finds its way having jurisdiction in Eastern District of Pennsylvania, wherever this is? I'm not so sure about that part.
Paul, I
boxing is
believe,
the wild, wild west. There's
Whoa,
no
whoa, whoa.
regulation in none of our disciplines, period. In no avenue ever in boxing is there any kind of regulation. So therefore, they can do or say whatever they want, and we have to go along with it. But that's the beauty of boxing, right?
I'll
That
tell you when
unregulation, that craziness.
Paul,
What are they hoping to get out of this?
hold
Paul?
on
What
one
are they
second,
suing?
guys. Hold on 1 second,
Yeah.
because the way that I read the complaint, Paul, I understand the logistics is that the ABC is the governing body actually, and the governing body is the one who hires Boxrec as the sole recorder, but it actually spans, it's ABC that actually hires Boxrec to perform the duties of collecting the data from all of the every sporting event. So is that correct? Do I have that correct?
That's a good
point. I think it recognizes Boxrec as the official record keeper these days, supplanting Fight Facts. The question is ABC actually a government agency or have any real regulatory power? De facto, maybe. In reality, I don't even think it's recognized as a quasi-governmental entity in the United States. I think it's more of a sort of a self-governing, collaborative, nonprofit. Here in the United States.
Well, it's Association of Boxing Commissions. Okay, so if it's the Association of Boxing Commissions, ABC is, and ABC is the one that's giving as an entity, as an organization, if they are giving Boxrec the sole accountability to, record and collect data on behalf of all boxing events, and they're being paid to do that from the associations of boxing commissions, then in essence, they're an employee or a contractor of the Association of Boxing Commissions. No?
That wasn't clear what the relationship is, but what is interesting to me, though, is if Boxrec, aspires to be that source, and they know a fight took place, and in this instance, Mendy actually says in the complaint that all these fights from the United Arab Emirates or wherever they were streamed. There's no question they actually happened, apparently.
Right.
Why, as just a collector of facts, would they not put that in the record, even with a question mark? Because I know they do unverified fights, too. Fights that they can't independently prove they have on Boxrec, or they have a question about. They'll list them anyway, but know that there's a question about them. Why would they not have certain ones on is the most interesting question raised for me from this matter. So, and to that point, if it was personal to the promoter, as he alleges, there was an interesting example. I don't know if any of this is based in reality. It's just in the four corners of the complaint. They have to show and prove at some point. But the promoter supposedly disguised his identity as promoter on one particular fight card that featured a fighter that's one of the plaintiffs in the case, and that fight got recorded because he wasn't noted as being involved. But fights where he's known to be involved, he's claiming they didn't record them because of his beef with various folks in the United Arab Emirates, whether it's Kenahan or people that are affiliated with them locally there. And that's why it's an interesting issue, but I don't know if it's an interesting case right now. So
it goes back to my argument. Like, Channel 11 doesn't have to tell you about the Yankee game if they don't want to.
Right, but if you're an official record keeper of, say, NBA basketball or something, you don't just leave off Knick games because of an issue with the owner necessarily.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
okay, so I'm seeing the legal hook comes in. The legal hook for this lawsuit is number one, ABC is a entity within the United States as a corporation, so that is a legal entity, right? Then you have the boxing commissions, which are state entities. So if there's any legal, Paul, I don't know what I'm talking about, but if there's any kind of legal hook from any kind of government agency, anything that is funded by the federal government, those commissions are funded. That ABC, their charter is a legal entity within United States, meaning they can be sued. I'm just speculating.
They can be, but the issue is all all the fight cards that they're talking about here were either in United Arab Emirates or Zimbabwe. Yet he's claiming, because grievances were done upon him about those cards, and these entities are based in the U.S. and U.K. in the Boxrec's case, that he has jurisdiction to bring this. There's a real jurisdiction question here too. That's way too convoluted for me to even try to unpack, given all the different parties. But
Paul, you've got that gangster. FBI is after him. We've got 15 million on his head, right? Okay. Because that American money was circulated over there, that gives FBI auspices to go over there and go get this man, right? So if American money was involved in the Zimbabwe and whatever, then you have legal American interest, and maybe that's a way to tie it in, because the FBI is after this guy.
Okay, you're talking about Daniel Kinahan. Yeah.
And he's over there.
Right. Well, I mean, if they're using this lawsuit as an instrument to try to get at him for discovery or something else, good luck even hauling them in. I mean, to get it to a deposition or anything like that, because even if they're to get jurisdiction in this case in the federal court in Pennsylvania, you have several international-based defendants, including Boxrec, Kinahan himself, Kinahan's local guy there in the Emirates. They're never going to get served properly. That's going to, if I had to guess, these people will never actually be served properly, never be deposed. I mean, it just seems like it could have been, if they're trying to focus on where to bring this or what to focus on. I mean, they're going for entities they've been taking shots at the dark at, unless they really put a lot of effort into international service. Can
they argue though? Can Boxrec argue that there's no commission in these countries, and maybe they don't put any cards from these countries up? I can stream my two neighbors fist fighting tomorrow. It doesn't have to go on Boxrec. I mean,
the point that Mendy makes in the complaint, or the plaintiff's making the complaint, is that they did record all the Kinahan-linked fights in the United Arab Emirates that took place, but none of his, or several of his that were not recorded, even though he says he was the first person several years earlier to do fights in the United Arab Emirates. As soon as Kinahan came in and they had problems, he's claiming his fights stopped getting recorded there.
Why is he claiming they're not being recorded? Like, what is the gripe? Is he telling us that?
Boxers are looking inactive that actually have active professional careers that are signed or fighting with them. There's a female fighter, Cabazon, and a male fighter. I think his last name is Benet, or I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Where he's claiming these fighters are demonstrably active, and it's not reflected on Boxrec.
What is
losing their rankings and everything.
Boxrec gain? Like, what do they have to gain by not putting this up? I know why these guys are getting hurt or they're claiming to, but why would they do this?
I mean, I think the inference he tries to make is that maybe there's an arm around them because of Kinahan's influence, but I don't know how he draws. It's not clear how that line is drawn in by the end of the complaint.
This complaint,
unless one of you guys thinks otherwise.
Just so you guys know, this complaint is 102 pages long.
Yes, it was a lot to unpack.
It's an enormous complaint, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, at least 12 people named in the complaint.
Right.
Has Boxrec responded?
I doubt they're even served yet. I mean, honestly, with a U.S.-based case, there's something called the Hague Convention, where unless service is waived, there's a whole process that could take months to serve them internationally.
Yeah, I mean, you have so, like you said, Paul's point was there's so many people named here that to serve all of them is, I mean, this seems to be, it could be a very expensive suit. That's been brought.
And there's no attorney attached to it. All these people filed it pro se. That's another interesting point.
Interesting.
No attorneys attached to this. So.
Does that have to do with the fact that it took place outside in the United Emirates, or
there's no shortage of attorneys and law firms with talent wrestling together international lawsuits, and they didn't get one for this case. I'm not going to read into it, but they didn't get one for what seems to be a very far-reaching, potentially damning case if it has any basis in reality. So
yeah. Well, I mean, with these kinds of things, I mean, they have to go through discovery, obviously, right? If they ever make it to discovery, if this thing ever gets to discovery, I mean, you're talking about a lot of discovery.
Hey, where's the retainer, right? Right, Paul? They couldn't drop the right size retainer.
Yeah, I mean, look, if somebody came to you with this, first of all, I tell them this is impossible to ever effectuate service on everybody. And second, I would tell them that I would need at least probably some sort of six-figure retainer to even try to tackle this from the get-go. Because the first thing you're going to get from probably several defendants, if they even get legitimately served, is a motion to dismiss for facial insufficiency once you get down to the actual causes of action in the complaint.
Right.
I've seen, for example, they have a civil RICO claim in there. I've seen civil RICO. I litigate civil RICO. This isn't civil RICO. They don't have any specificity as far as what constitutes the acts that they're saying is racketeering.
Wow.
Nothing. There's nothing. I would eat that alive. That cause of action itself.
Right.
I mean,
but they list that as one of the claims.
Right. And that's usually when you see that in a civil setting, it's more often than not. I'm not going to say all the time. It's a heavy-handed tactic to try to get a settlement, because if you could establish civil RICO, you get triple damages.
Which brings me to the point. What is it that they actually want, Paul? What do you think they want?
To me, it feels like a rabbit punch. I think they wanted to put some light on that situation in very high profile. They didn't feel like they're getting anywhere trying to shoot it out with Boxrec and American or Association of Boxing Commission quietly. I think they saw an opportunity once the buzz started about Kinahan's underworld ties again to really kind of put him out there also. I just feel like, it'll start the conversation like it's doing here. But I realize they don't expect it to go anywhere in the court. I'd be very surprised.
So in the actual suit, on page 3 of the suit, it states on belief and information in 2016, Defendant Association of Boxing Commission selected Boxrec as a sole boxing registrar empowered to perform record keeping under the Boxing Act and the Muhammad Ali Act to the exclusion of fight facts, the extent encumbered and all others, creating a monopoly in violation of the Sherman Act.
Well, the Sherman Act is an interesting claim too, because again, half of these entities are internationally based. You're claiming a U.S. antitrust problem when you have an internationally based entity. That one organization is
It's
again.
I mean, you're saying monopoly, but I mean, they're only going to have one record. There's only one record keeper for probably every other sport. There's not going to be 2 or 3. So does that even have any weight?
Well, the question is, are they really blocking any other company from entry into that sphere too? And really, if you had the resources, if Fight Facts I don't even know if Fight Facts are still around or not, but if there's another group that could simply keep an eye on the world as well as Boxrec, by all means, nobody's blocking them from doing that, as far as I could tell. It's just that the Association of Boxing Commission has decided that it needs one official record keeper, and now it's Boxrec.
And I told you what happened with that. They were telling Boxrec for years, if you get to a certain percentage of accuracy, we can use you. Fight Facts didn't even fight it. And, they were getting, you had to pay $30 a pop to pull the records of fighters. So I don't think they fought too hard. I think they went under on purpose. I don't think they were making any real money. And Boxrec was around for a very long time making money on ads on the site anyway. So, I mean, I don't think anybody cares too much. To be like, at the end of the day, this is it's not going to hit the news at any point. Unless, they find something way deeper that is the reason for this. 99.9% of the world could care less if they're keeping accurate records on Boxrec.
Right, I can't disagree, but yeah, I mean, the idea of a monopoly by them, I don't know where that goes. I mean, let's take the only other monopoly comparison made recently in boxing history. A lawsuit, I believe, was between Golden Boy and Heyman. They're alleging Heyman was engaging in monopolistic practices, and the court thought otherwise, even at the height of Heyman's powers, and pretty meticulously broke down why. And I think there's a lot more to play with in that complaint than there is in this complaint, as far as any claims of monopolistic practices.
And then what if before it goes to court, Box says, "Oh, you're right, we missed them all. Here they are. They're good now." Then what the hell?
Right. Our bad. Yeah.
Then, sorry about that. We missed them. Here they are. Sue us some more. Now see what happens now. I mean, I just can't imagine. Is that a way to rectify it? Just throw the fights up? Yeah, you know what? You're right. We missed them. Thanks for telling us.
Yeah, again, that's why I think it's largely I think it's a rabbit punch to them just to kind of put attention on the situation because I can't see this getting anywhere other than that. So
it's not just to Boxrec, it's also to ABC. And
the ABC.
Yeah, I mean, because they go on to say further, this action is brought under the Sherman Act, right? So they cite the Sherman Act.
It's the antitrust one, yeah.
Yeah, and then they talk about, they say ABC and Boxrec have conspired with each other and with others to not only maintain a monopoly, but also because this monopoly and monopoly actions have caused the plaintiff harm.
There's a interesting bit of language I love in New York case law. In reference to summary judgment in particular, where they talk about the mere incantation of a cause of action is not enough to sustain an action. And essentially what they're doing repeatedly in there is saying monopoly, racketeering act, racketeering conspiracy.
Right.
Okay, so you've said the words, but where is the substance when you get to the point of proving it, which is what I was having trouble with as I was going through. And the amount of witnesses you would need to say exactly what they think happened on information and belief is astonishing to put together the conspiracy they're alleging.
Yeah.
So,
well, right.
I mean,
you can't just claim it. You have to actually, have the evidence to back it up.
So, Paul, what do you predict is going to happen with this?
I think, I wouldn't be surprised if U.S. side parties get served. That would be the Association of Boxing Commissions. And I'm not even sure if there's any other U.S.-based entity that's being talked about. I wouldn't be surprised to see a motion to dismiss. I wouldn't be surprised on the flip side to see perhaps an early resolution of this where it just goes away quietly. I don't think it got the attention that maybe they're expecting it would, with Kinahan's news making the rounds in the last week or two.
Right.
I only saw it on Fight News, and I was able to pull down the complaint, and I was intrigued by it and ran it by Mark. And I think we probably give more attention than anyone has in boxing thus far. Even though, like I said, if there's a real claim there that Boxrec for some reason holds out professional results, I don't want to know that. But is it as big as what they're saying it is?
Yeah. Well,
I don't think so.
Again, you guys, look, at the end of the day, time will tell. Time will tell what happens here and whether or not this goes on to the next level. I mean, we don't know. Paul, I know you'll be keeping an eye on this one, and I know that
best I can. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm curious why it didn't get more play, given what it's what it's saying. But
well, I did see an article come out about it, and I didn't get into the article because I literally just saw it hit the wire yesterday, and I didn't have a chance to get into it. But I read through this complaint as much as I could. I mean, this 102 pages. That's personally, reading that much is not good for my brain. It's not good for my head for obvious reasons, but y'all know, but we don't have to get into that on the broadcast, but so I haven't gotten into it that deep, but in any case, it's bad news for Boxrec and ABC, and it's something that we're going to have to come back to. And I hope, I'm sure the folks at Boxrec and ABC are already on it, and they're handling it, and they're doing what they have to do. And we wish them well, and hope they can work it all out. And we look forward to being able to see our fights and the fights of all these incredible fighters up on Boxrec. So because it's what we all go to, and certainly, the listeners or the viewers that are watching the broadcast today can't see, but much of the information that I gather is presented right in front of me, and some of it is coming directly from those sources. So, we rely upon, these sources to deliver us, accurate information, and we hope that it stays that way. And John and Paul, we, really want to thank you guys for being on the program tonight. And Harold, it's always a pleasure. We're rounding out an hour and a half broadcast, which is one of the longest ever in the history of the Boxing Breakdown. But, look, us four can talk about boxing for an 8-hour day. We could do this all day long, and it's to the benefit of our fans.
I'm here all night.
I want to thank you guys for being on the broadcast, really. And for those of you listening in, thank you. Don't forget to hit the subscribe, like notifications, and join us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Tune in to the Boxing Breakdown, and we will see you on the next episode shortly. Thank you, guys. Peace and love.
Thanks again.
See you later.
Thank you so much.
Fight fans, join host Mark Roxey and special guests as they break down all aspects of the boxing world, including news, business, management, training, promotions, fan reactions, upcoming events, matchups, future boxing stars, title fights, state of the boxing world, and all the stuff you don't see when you watch boxing. This podcast is released each week on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Live streamed on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook Live. It's the Boxing Breakdown, hosted by Mark Roxey.